Hi guys, welcome to another episode of our full stack mobile development series. In today's episode, we are going to continue on our sign up screen. We are going to integrate the registration APIs we built in our previous episodes. But before we do that, let's make a few corrections to our sign up screen. If you look at our UI here, you realize that they already have an account. It's in light 20 and here it's black. So I'll head over to my project, to the sign up screen, and then here already have an account. This is it. I'm going to change the styling for this text span. So I'm just going to go here. This is the text, that's the children. So style, I'm going to say text, have my app styles. And here it's going to be a regular. So here, let's double check. So this is a medium 16. So here, medium, the size is 16. But I want to specify the color, which is app colors, light 20. All right, so the medium by default is 16 here. Now let's look at it. Now we have it as grayed out. Okay, good. Another thing we want to change is that in our icons here, you realize that when we tap on it, it gives you this rectangular shape here. And that's because we're using Inkwell for this. But we want to also make a change to that. So we head over to, first we fix the app bar. So we head over to our sign up screen. In the app bar here, you realize that on the leading, we wrap this icon in an inkwell. We can also change this, right? Take the icon we have, and then instead of an inkwell, we can have an icon button. Okay, and then we change this to icon and this to on press. So on press, we'll go back and then let's save this. So now if I tap on my back, it gives me the circular shape instead of the rectangular. So that shows that that is the icon. Now let's do the same thing here. So we head over to our text input and then we look for our icon, which is also wrapped in inkwell. First, we change this to icon. We change the inkwell to icon button. And then we change the on tap to on pressed, right? So now we save it. And here we get the circle instead of the rectangle. All right. Now let's set up our web application such that it will be accessible to the simulator we have here. Because the Laravel application is hosted locally on our computer, we would have to expose the application to the internet. So there are two approaches. It's either we expose the application to the internet using Expose or ngrok or similar services, or we can do that using our local network. Now, because the device is on the same network as our computer, we can just head over to our terminal here. If you're on Windows, you type ipconfig. If you're on Mac or Linux, you just type ifconfig, and then you look for the adapter that you're connected to. So I'm connected to my Wi-Fi, and this is my IP address, right? So I can test it by pinging that IP address, and then it should give me this response. Okay, so now we have this IP address. We head over to Visual Studio Code, open the integrated terminal, and type php artisan serve -- host is equal to, and then we type the IP address we have, and then we press enter. Now this will run the application on this IP address at port 8000. So now let's copy this. First, let's test it in our browser. So I go to my browser and I paste this, and this should give me my Laravel application. This is a welcome screen of my Laravel application. And then I head over to my simulator. So whichever simulator you use, you just go to the browser in the simulator and paste that IP address. So 192.168.215.1.215.8000. And you're supposed to get the same screen. So that means your simulator can reach the Laravel application. All right. Now let's set up the services. So in our Android Studio, we head over to lib, and then we create a new directory, we call it services, right? So this is going to contain all our API services. And then I'm going to create a .dat file and call it API. Okay, so this class API. Okay, So now here we are going to define what our API is, and we are going to write some methods to make both post and get request to our API server. But before we do that, we want to create another class here in the services. So we create a new .dat file. We call it response. Now this is going to be responsible for handling the JSON response that we get from our API endpoints. For example, if we go to our Postman here and we try to register, we get this message which tells us the email is already taken. Okay, now if I change the email here and then I sign in, I send the request. Now I get the same message, but here a different object, which is the result, and then it has the user and token. Okay, so here we're just going to create class response. All right, now we know that there's always going to be the message, and then we have sometimes the errors or sometimes the results based on the status of the API. But for now, let's handle the results. So here, because the results also changes based on what the request is going to be, we are going to make it generic. I'm going to make our response class very generic. So here we pass the type, and then it can be nullable. That means that we can have an empty result. Here we then also want to create a constructor with the fields. Okay. Now what happens is we need to manually map the JSON we have to our classes back and forth, and we do not want to do that. So to make our job easier, we're going to use a Flutter package called JSON serializable. So I'm going to head over to pub.dev and then look for the JSON serializable. Okay, so that's it here. And then we are going to look at the example. So here we have to add JSON annotations to our dependencies. So I copy that, head over to my pubspec.yaml file here, my dependencies here. You can just add it right here. And then I need to add this dev dependencies as well. So I head over to my dev dependencies here, and then I add this too. Then I run my pub.get. Okay. So now let's look at the examples. It's the same thing you can find here. So we can just go ahead. We have defined our values here, and then we have our constructor. So we need these two new factories here. Great. So let's head over to our response. We need to first add the parts and add this as well. So our part file, which is going to help the code generator to generate the code that we do not want to write. Okay, and then we say that this is a JSON serializable, and that would import the annotations. All right, we have it there. And then let's paste our factory. So we do not say person, we are calling ours results. So I'll replace all that. Okay, now this is showing red because we have not generated the code for that. And to do that, we have to run runner build here. So we go to our integrated terminal and then we run this. Now this is going to throw an error, and that's because we are passing the T and it does not know about the T. And to fix this, we head over to the two methods here. So the first one is the JSON. Now we need to tell it what T is and how to do the mapping. So we say T, which has a function here of object, which is nullable JSON, right? And we call this one from JSON T. And then we pass this as a second argument to this. And then we do the same thing here. I do the reverse of this. So we have object of function T, which is the value, and we are going to say to JSON T, right? And then we pass that here. So to JSON T. Now, one last thing, we come up here and then we say that generic argument factories, and then we specify that to be true. Okay. Now let's test this again. We head over to our integrated terminal and then we run it. So now we have a new file here which handles the mapping. As you can see, this is the code that we did not want to write. So yeah, that is our response. Now we have our response. Let's write the API classes. So we are going to need two methods, one for post, one for get. And this brings us to our second Flutter package. So we head over to the pub.dev. Now there are two packages. We can first use HTTP from Flutter here, which we use to make the HTTP request, or we can use the DO package, which is a bit more advanced. We are going to use the DO package for this project. So to install it, you can just copy this, or we can also use this approach where we go to our integrated terminal and then we run this, which would add it to our prospect.yaml file here, and then run the pub.get. Okay, so now we have the DO package ready. Now let's write our API function. I think before that, let's also make another change. So here I want to say API service. I want to append the type so that we know what it is. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our post method. So what we are going to do is this method is going to wrap around the DO package and then send the request to the API and then return the response to whichever controller is going to use this service. Okay, so here we are going to head over to DO here and then look at the example. So we call a final DO and then we can just go ahead and copy this and then we say that future post, and that has this, and then we have to add the async and then we have to import DO from our package here and can do that by doing this. Okay, so that's DO. All right, so this will make a post request to this and then we can specify the body and all that. So this is just how it looks. Now what we want to do is we want to first get the URL, which is going to be passed here, right? And then because this is a post, we need a body. So we can look at some of the post implementations here. So this post has this data, which is this body. Okay, so here we need to pass a data and you can see it's a map. So let's come here, create our map of string dynamic, and this is our body, right? And we pass our body here and then we print the results. So what we want to do is here we want to just return the response. Okay, so this is going to be a feature of that response. Now there's the response from the DO package, not the response that we generated. We are going to use this later on. Okay, now let's make more modifications to this. So in here, what we can also say is we just want to say that final this and we return this. Now we want to pass the headers. Okay, we want to tell the package that we are only accepting application JSON, and to do that we just go on here, specify the options and say headers, and then we pass this. So the first one we want to say that we want to accept application JSON, and that's the same thing we are passing in our postman here in our body, in our header, sorry, we say accept application JSON. So it's just the same thing that we have here. Okay, now this might throw an error depending on the status of the network, whether you have network or not. But what we want to do is this is just the wrapper around this. In the actual service that's going to consume this, we are going to do the try catch. Okay, so here we do the same thing. We can just duplicate this code and then here say that get. Now this makes a get request, and the get request does not have the body but it has the query parameters, right? So here we change this to, we just say params. Okay, and then we just say params. Now this will also make a get request here. Another thing is you realize you're repeating this. Okay, so we can just come up here and then say that the final then here, and then we just use it in here. Okay, all right. Now another thing is we want to make this class static so that we do not have to instantiate it before we can call any of this. So we just make this static, and this has to be static as well. Okay, for it to work. Nice. Now let's work on our authentication. So the user has to log in, which goes to API/register, and then we log in. Now let's set up our API route. So we create a new file, we say API routes, and then we're going to create the class API routes, which is going to have a static string, and then it's going to be our base URL, which is called to here. So here, because we're exposing the app here, this is our base URL at the moment. We copy it here, then we paste it /API. So this is our base URL. Okay, so now let's do the register URL, which is going to be this base URL here, class register. We can use interpolation, so we go ahead and do that. So /register, so it's going to be this /API/register. Okay, good. Now we are going to create a new folder here, and we are going to call it controllers. Now in our previous episodes, we talked about controllers handling our IO here. So I'm going to create our Auth controller. So a class Auth controller. Now this is going to be responsible for the registration, login, logout endpoints. Okay. So the next thing is we want to consume our post method here in our Auth controller. So in the Auth controller, I'm going to create a feature. For now, a feature. And then we have register. And for registration, we need a name. So string name, string email, and string password. Okay, these are the two things we need to register. And then here we are going to have final response is equal to our await our API service here dot post. And then here we need to pass the URL and the body. So the body here is going to be name, which is our name, our email, which is the email, and the password, which is the password. We could have just passed it directly, but because in the post here we are using string dynamic, that's why we have to do the manual mapping. And then here we import IO. Now we need to have this, so app API routes register URL. So that's it. Now the reason why we are doing all this is that, for example, if we want to change the package we use to make our HTTP request, we just change it in this API that file, and then it would affect the controller and any other usages. So we have one source of truth, right? One place to make some of these changes. If we want to make a change to the kind of headers we pass and all that, we can do that here. In the future, we are going to pass the authentication bearer token, all that, and you realize that we do that only once here, and it would affect the auth controller and any other controller that uses it. Now, we said that we are going to handle what happens if there's an error here. So we are going to take all of this and then wrap it in a try catch. So for now, just catch the exception. We're just going to catch E and print it. Okay, so that's what we are going to do for now. So this will make a post to this endpoint with these parameters, and then we have to use the results. So here we have to use the response that we created here. But to do that, we want to add another value. We want to make a few adjustments here. So here, this is nullable, so it's not required. We remove this, and then we add a new field, which is a Boolean saying success. So this is going to tell us whether it's success or not. So it's success. So whether it's successful or not. And then we're going to add it here. So I'm just going to say require.this dot success. Okay. Now I need to run my builder to make the changes to realize it updates this file and it adds this new thing. Okay. So in our auth controller, this should return the response that we have. So here we are going to return response, which is going to be our response, not the one from the DO package, but our response that we did. So we have to return. For now, let's return a regular one, which is success is false, and the message is testing. Okay, so this is our response. All right. Now, if there's an error, we want to also return this response. So in our try catch here, success is false, here is true. Okay. So now we have our function. We can just format it. Okay, now this is good. And in the message, we can return what the error is. So now let's test this. We head over to our sign up, views, auth, sign up here. And then in our sign up function here, we can make use of the auth controller. Now we can also update this and make this a static function. Okay. And then head over to our sign up here. So at this point, we're saying that var result is equal to our auth controller dot register, and we pass the name and everything, but here we have to await it. And then whatever happens once it's done, we just update this to false. Okay, so here we pass our name, and it's going to be our input, our name input controller, the test, and we want to trim it. We are going to improve the trimming, but for now let's just use this to test. And then we have our email test.trim, but for the password, we do not want to trim the password, because if the user has space, we do not want to touch it. All right, so this is it. And then we have our results here. Now once we have the results, let's print the results message. Okay, so we head over to our application, and then let's test this. So I just go back here, type test at gmail.com 1 2 3 4, and then I switch to run. So let me run it now. We have an error here, and it says that we had a 422 here. That's the error. And then we need to now show what the error was. Okay, so we head over to our controller here. We say that on do error catch, sorry, on do exception catch, and then we catch the error, and then we return this response. I think it's let's change this response here. It doesn't belong, I don't think it belongs to the services. I think it's a detail, so it belongs to the model here. I first refactor this, move it to the model, and in here we want to change this one to, and say that it's a result. So that's the result. I want to call the result of our API, and then we rename this as well. I can just go ahead and delete this, it will recreate it. And then in our result here, we say result, we change everything response to result, match the casing. Okay, so we have only results. All right, so this here, and then I go ahead into my created terminal and then generate the file again. Right, so now we have our result class, and then I go here in my sign up, in my register here, I change this to result so that it does not, interfere with the response that we have from our DO package. Okay, so these are results. Okay, right now this works. So here we want to show the response that we got, and I can just say to string. All right, so let's go ahead and test it again. We switch to our build here, then we run. So now we get the message. The message is the name field is required and 2 more errors. So you have to pass the name and everything. That means that in our post here, we are not passing the body that we were supposed to pass. So let's debug it. First, we want to look at the payload that we have. So this is our name and everything. Let's print the payload that we are sending. We can do that in there here. We get this. Right, and then before we do the request, we want to print it. Now let's test it again, submit, and then we realize that we are not passing any name, any password or anything. Okay, so let's fix that. That means the error is in our sign up here. So the name, the email, Great. So let's look at our text box here. You realize that we have the name controller and we are passing it to our text input component here. So in our text input component, we have the controller, but we are not passing it to the test one field. So here we say controller, and then we pass our widget tested data in controller, right? So now let's go ahead. Now everything is reset. We have to provide a name, so test at gmail.com 1 2 3 4, and then we click on sign up again. Now it says that the email has already been taken. So now you realize that we have the payload being passed, but we are getting a different method. Now we want to show that error to the user here. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. And to show the error, we are using on the sign up here, we are using the scaffold. So let me just close this. We are using the scaffold here so we can show a snack bar. All right, and to do that, we are just going to say that instead of printing a message, we say that if the result dot is success, that means if it's successful, we just for now just want to print the message for that one. So result dot message. Now if not, and let's handle the if it's not successful, we say scaffold messenger of this contest, we want to show a snack bar. Okay, so we have a new snack bar, and then we pass the content, which is going to be a test for now, and we want to show the result.message. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test this again. We click on the sign up, and then we get the result here, which is the entire response that we got. Now we want to extract the actual message from it. So in here, we do not want to say response this anymore, but we want to take out the actual message, and that's why we had this model to pass the message to extract it. Okay, so here we are going to first read the map in our auth and then print the response data. So this can be null. Let's make nullable here. Okay, and then we head over to this and then we sign up. Now let's look at our so that's our message there. Let's do it again. Good, that's our message there. So that means we have this, we can read a message from this map. So here, this is our message. Good, then we get a message. So let's test it by passing just a message instead. All right, so that's our message. Okay, now here what we want to do is we want to get this message if it exists. If it does not, then we show an actual error. So var message, I can just make it a final. So let's go to this, or an error. Okay, so that means if we're unable to get a message from our API, we just show the message an error occurred, try again. Okay, so that's the message we want to show the user, and then we pass this message in here. Okay, so we go again. Now let's intentionally make an error. So assuming we pass the field that is not defined here, and then we do this, it should say that an error occurred. Okay, now let's format this snack bar a bit. Let's make it look a bit presentable. So here this is our snack bar. We have our style, and then we have our test style. We head over to our app styles, and then we define one for the error. So for the error, I'm just going to say snack bar. So colors by default, if it's error, it's red, and then we want to show this as well. So yeah, I think this is good enough. Now we don't want to even the colors, let's make it white for the snack bar. Sorry, instead let's make it white because we're going to show it on a red message. So app styles dot snack bar. Okay, and then we can let's format this code a bit, and then the background color, if it's an error, we want to show red. So colors dot red, and we want to make use of it. So let's use a shade of 500, I think, should look a bit easier to the eye. Good, I think this is fine enough. So that's our error, and we are showing it to the user. Okay, good. If it's a successful message, we want to show a different snack bar. So what we can do is we can take this snack bar, because you are going to be reusing it, and keep it elsewhere, so that we'll be calling it repeatedly. Okay, so for now we are just showing this. So let's go ahead and take our snack bar out of this. So in our lib here, I create a new directory, I call it utils, and in here I created that file called helper. So I'm going to create my class helper here. Okay, and then let me just get my scaffold here out. So I'm going to create a static snack bar, which is going to take a string, which is the message, right, and the boolean, which is whether it's an error. By default is true, so by default is an error. I can just do this. Okay, all right, and then this is supposed to return this snack bar. Okay, so I think here I just take the context as well, and then I import. Okay, so if it's error, if it's successful, I want to use my app. I think for now let's just use green and red for now. If not, good. Okay, let's look at our snack bar here. We're going to make this here medium. So we want to keep this as a medium, so we can just return our medium, and then we pass our size, which is our size, and then our color, which is our color. Okay, so that when we make changes to the medium, automatically affects the snack bar as well. Okay, so that's my snack bar in my helper here. And if it's successful, I want to show this here. If not, I want to show green. So here, for now, let's just show our app colors if it's successful. Our primary color. Okay. So in my sign up, I would then do, if it's error, helper dot snack bar of this contest, and my message is my result.message, and its success is false because it's an error. Okay, and then I have the same thing here, right? Now we have more errors that we want to show and want to focus on. We want to show the user which field has the error, and to do that we head over here. Let's take this, we don't want to hard code any of the strings, so we head over to our resources, app strings, create this one, and say that an error occurred. We can make it a bit more nice. Oops, an error occurred, try again. So an error occurred, try again. Okay, so that's our message, and then we head over to our app strings, an error, okay, try again. Okay, so now this is for the die exception. We also want to handle the last one, which is in case we have any other exception, right? Here we want to also just return this error, but then with this actual message. Okay, let's first do this, to do this here. Okay, all right, I think I prefer this formatting. Change this to a const. Oh, sorry, it's a final. And then we have this here, and then in my register. All right, formatting. Now if there's this error, we are showing this message. Now we also want to get the error, so final errors, and that is this here. So response dot data, and then we have the message, and then let's first show the errors that we get. So here we want to get print this errors, okay, and then we head over here. I realize that we get this map, right, of these key value strings, so we want to define that. So here we first want to say final errors is equal to e.response.data, and we take the errors, and this is nullable, right? So let's print the errors here. Okay, now you see that we get our errors here. Let's print the error for email, and then we go ahead and we do this. Now I realize we get this here, which is an array as defined here. All right, so now let's pass this to our result. So we come to our result here, and we create a map of string dynamic, and it's nullable, and we see this the errors, and then here we add it to our constructor, the errors. Okay, so in our auth we just pass this, say errors is equal to the errors I have here. All right, so now I can then go ahead into my sign up here, and then if there's an error, let's print our results.errors, print the same thing, and then here we get the errors as you can see here, but I want to show it to the user. Okay, so here we first remove this. We don't want to print that. We go up here, and then we create a new variable. We call it map string dynamic, and it's going to be called errors, and then here, so that's going to keep track of all our errors in the form. And then we scroll down here, and we say that if the result errors is not null, then set state errors is equal to our result.errors, which is not null. Okay, so we've set our results here. Okay, so because we are doing the set state at the bottom here, we can just say results this, and this will set the state. Okay, right now at this point we can just print our errors again just to see what we have. So if we have an error and we print this, yes, we have the error here. Good. Okay, so we'll comment this, and then we head over to our text box component here. So over here we add a new string which is nullable, and we say error, and then we add it to our constructor here, and then we scroll down to our decoration. So in our decoration here we add one field, we add the error test, and then we are going to say widget.error. Okay, so we save this, and then the final thing we have to do here is then error is equal to the errors that we have, and then you realize that the errors is going to be an array of this strings here. So we say errors, we get the name, and then since it's going to be nullable, we join with this. Okay, so here that's the name. We do the same thing for the email, and then we do the same thing for the password. So here password. Okay, so now let's save it and test it again. So if I do anything, I get this error. If I change this, it's already taken. All right, now we have to make another change in the sign up here. We want to reset the errors when the form is being submitted. So here we say that errors is empty, just before the form is submitted, and then we get it again. So here, when I submit it, it complains about the email and the password. So the password has to be 6 characters. So let's first start with this. Okay, we go back, test it again, and then we say test at gmail.com 1234. Okay, so now it says email is already taken. I change this and I submit, and I realize the email is no longer there, but it's complaining about the password being 6 characters. So let's say I change this to test, which is already taken, and I make the password 123456. Now it complains only about the email being already taken. All right, so that's how we can show our error. Now let's use a new email, and then we submit. Nice. So here it's successful. Okay, and we from our UI, when it's successful, right, we just route the user to the verification screen. So to depict that, we just, to show that here, let's create the verification screen. So verification, and then here it's a stateful widget. We call it verification screen. All right, I import my material. I head over to my app routes. I create a verification here, and then in my main.dat, I say that this verification, so verification screen. Okay, nice. Now let's head over to our sign up screen. So if the error message, we do this, and then we set the state as not loading, right? But if there's no error, then we navigate. So navigator of contest, push name, and then here we are just going to pass the app routes dot verification here. Okay, so let's go ahead and test that. Now if I submit this, I have this one here. Okay, and then I can come back here. Now the problem is, if there's an error here, we do not want to continue anything, right? So we want to, when the loading is done here, we want to remove the state and handle this. Now if there's an error, we want to return, we do not want to continue. So if there's an error, it stops here and that does not proceed to this. So at this point, I just go ahead and I type this. Now it says the email is already taken. So let me do 1 and then submit, and then realize that it routes me, and then I can come back. Let's add something to this at least, so that we have something to show that it's the verification page. So there's the scaffold, which has the app bar, and like I said, we can reuse the app bar here, this app bar here. For now, I'm just going to duplicate it, but we are going to export this app bar out from here and then use it once. Yeah. So let me say on the verification screen, it says verification. So we have verification. All right, so here I just say verification. Okay, good. So when the user signs up, at this point the email is already taken, and then we have the verification, so they can come back. Realize that we are not making sure that they check this. So in the sign up, you scroll down to our form. Here we check the form, and then we also want to make sure that they've agreed to the terms and conditions, right? So that's in the checkbox component here. We need to keep track of the checkbox value if it's done. Okay, so here we just need a boolean as agreed, which by default is false, and that's going to be our checkbox component here. Okay, now if they agree, we just say that this value is equal to whatever the value was, but we need to update the state. Okay, All right. So if they have agreed, we keep track in this as agreed. And then in our form here, we want to make sure that the user has agreed. So if the user has not agreed, we throw the error and then we return. Okay. So here we throw the error and we can use our Snackbar. And then we say that strings input is required. And then our input here is going to be the terms. So we want them to agree to the terms. All right, so we have our terms and privacy is required. So in the sign up here, we replace all our inputs here with app strings dot terms and privacy, and then it's an error message. So if this is unchecked and they sign up, terms and privacy policy is required, so they have to check this, right? So if they don't check it, it cannot move forward. When they check it and they submit, then it complains about the email. So now let's sign up with my email address. So devsafo, let me say 900. Okay, then I'm going to go to my inbox here, and then you realize I get the verification code. So that's it for the sign up screen. What we've done is we've validated the field. We make sure that when we get an error from the API, we show that error to the user depending on what the error message is. For example, if we want to say devsafo 900, like the one we signed up just now, it tells us that the email has already been taken. This coming from the server. And if the password is not more than 6 characters, we get this error. Now, another issue here is if I type spacebar, right, it treats it as a valid test, and that's wrong. So you realize the backend trims it and then finds this issue. So what we are going to do is in our text input component here. So in my text input component, I'm just going to go up to my component form test input here, where I do the validation. So I realize I do values null or values empty. Now what we want to do is we want to change this. Okay, so if the value is null, that is right. Also, if the value, so if the text input, so I need to get it from the widget, the text input type is equal to password. So if the text input type is equal to a password, we do not want to trim it. Okay, so if it's equal to a visible password, we do not want to trim it. And then here we apply trim. So if the field is not a password, sorry, so here we change it. If it's not a password and we trim it and it's empty, then we return this. All right, so now let's give it a try. Here, go to my app, and then you realize that it's telling me my name is required, even though I put an empty space. Right, now let's do the same thing for the password. I do this, and it's telling me the password is required, and that's because in my test, in my sign up here, where I have the password here, it says it's password. That's the boolean we are using. So let's go back to our test input, and then instead of using the text widget here, we just say it's password. So if it's not password, right, so if it's not a password field, then we do not validate. So now I realize if the user types an empty space, it will still ask them to type, unless they type this, then it works, and the system will trim it on both left and right. So we have the text now, and now it's saying that the password field is required. The email is already taken. So if it's not password and the value dot trim, right? Okay. Another thing here is that if we look at our UI, you realize that there's a bit of space between these two as compared to ours here. So we head over to our sign up, and then in the let's view here, we just want to add some app spacing dot vertical, and then here we are going to use a size of 48 so that it's a more spacing. Okay, so if you look at our UI here, that is it. So now let's test the entire flow. So the user logs in, comes to the sign up screen, provides a name. So I'm going to provide my name, which is going to be John Doe. I provide my email address so that we test if the email is being sent. So example +18, and then the password is 1234556. And then if we do not check this, it should throw the error. Now we check it, and then we submit, and then we are redirected here. We head over to our inbox, and then we should receive a new email. Good. Now we have the new email, which is the recent one. There's it, John Doe, 0 minutes, and then that's our validation code. So in our next episode, we are going to work on the verification page, as well as work on persisting the user that we just created on our local database, so that when the user restarts the application, they don't have to do the sign up again. And now we want to also make sure that the validation works so that the user cannot sign up with the same email address. At this point, they just have to log in instead of signing up, and they can view the password and unview the password. Now, one last thing before we go, let's head over to our project in Android Studio. Open the integrated terminal. We have to push all the changes we've done to GitHub. So we first do git status. All right. These are changes: git add, everything, git commit. And then we are going to say that set up project with Auth with sign up screen. This is the first commit we are going to make here, and then we head over to GitHub. So I have the repo for this, and this for the Laravel backend we did. So we are going to create a new one for the mobile. So this is going to be Penger mobile. So Penger mobile app using Flutter and public. Then I create it. So I just need to add my remote and everything and just push. All right. So now these are changes. We have to commit the sign up screen and then the onboarding with sign up screen. So those are two commits. I'll provide a link to the repositories, both the Penger API and Penger mobile, in the description below. And that's it for today's episode. If you have not subscribed, please do so and hit the notification bell to be notified on the next update. See you.